The surveyors are very few. You cannot survey the whole country. But what you can do, you can train local staff, and they can support your function to survey the entire country. Men, women, girls have equal rights and access to land and its resources independent of civil and marital status. Very important. So we must look at the existing cultural norms and practices that discriminate women and girls. If we are talking about having the whole country registered, we cannot afford the whole country registered only in the names of men. We must also include women and girls. Moreover, they are 51% of the country. So we cannot afford to exclude 51% from national development. And then the land administration institutions at sub-county level should be strengthened to provide transparent, accessible. The sub-county is the lowest, as you saw in the institutional framework. It is the nearest administration center where people get services, because that's where the area land committee is, that's where the recorder is, that's where many land offices are, even for dispute resolution, mediation, and alternative dispute resolution. So therefore the sub-county becomes very important, and we need to strengthen it, because the EMZO is still very far. It was a good move from what it was, but it is still very far. Because an area like Chigezi has, I think, one EMZO, or two maybe. There is another one in Rukunjiri. But if you think about how many districts in the area of Chigezi, very many, and they all have to travel to Kabale for land services. That's very far. So what we are saying is, can we make the sub-county the center, a one-stop center for land services for the community? And then maybe the EMZO becomes, you link up the sub-county to the ministerial zonal office for higher services. Now, the institutional framework should support easy institutional collaboration, information exchange, integrated spatial planning and implementation. And then, importantly, community engagement and participation shall be promoted as a means of ensuring accountability and transparency. We need to include the communities in land administration processes. If we are going to deal with the issues that I showed you before, why we have overlapping titles on the same piece of land is because the communities were not involved. They were not consulted. Some people just get surveyors from Kampala, take them to Karamoja, survey this land is mine. Tomorrow, after surveying an issuance of the title, someone is going to the commissioner of land registration and saying, this title was issued on part of my land. So but if the community is involved as part of that process, then we shall deal with some of these issues. So, mapping recordation of parcels on customary land using visual boundaries, low-cost handheld GNSS techniques will help us to record 20 million parcels in 10 years. So what we are looking at is the country has it is estimated that it has about 23 million parcels. So what we are saying, can we record the remaining unrecorded parcels within the next 10 years? And for that to happen, we must utilize modern and low-cost surveying techniques. Mapping recordation of occupancy rights under Milo and other registered land. We are estimating that on Milo land, there are 3 million parcels, and those also have to be recorded in the next 10 years. Then creation of parcel databases for customary land and occupancy rights, and then accessibility of all parcel boundaries through land administration system. So there are also things we need to do in the legal framework. Review of the laws to support fit for purpose, land administration, recordation of formal and informal land rights, promoting the use of ADR for dispute resolution, and promoting the establishment of customary database at the sub-county, as well as promoting gender equity for land and property rights. I talked about that. And then in terms of the institutional framework, we should promote good land governance rather than bureaucratic barriers. So we should reduce on the processes and procedures. Can we review our land registration process? Why is it too long? Why does it take so long? And we make it less heavy, but serving the purpose. This is what we are talking about. And then promoting integrated institutional framework rather than sectoral silos. NEMA, Ministry of Water, Lands, all natural resource and ministries and departments of government that contribute in this have to have an integrated way of working. And then promoting transparent land information with ease and affordable access for all. And then capacity development, which I talked about, becomes very important. But the last one, but not the least, is promoting participation of civil society and private sector. How can private sector play a big role in land administration? How can civil society organization be involved? And then this is the budget that we are proposing for recording all land rights in the next 10 years. So we are talking about, in summary, about 470 million US dollars. It looks like a big budget, but actually this is not. The Ministry of Lands has acquired a loan. Initially it had acquired a loan of 100 million US dollars for putting in place the digitization process. Currently they have applied for an additional funding of almost a higher amount of around, I think, 150, 200 million. So what we are saying is the ministry in the next 10 years should look at available funding and fund this because it will provide tenure security for all. As I conclude, we are saying we need approximately 2 trillion Ugandan shilling that is required to secure land rights in Uganda in the period of the next 10 years. And we are saying that this is only possible using the fit-for-purpose land administration approach that I just described. If you have not taken anything from my presentation, you take this. You take this. What we are saying is, you enter a restaurant and they tell you that there are 3 services. One service is good, but if it is good, it is not cheap and it will not be fast. You get it. The other one is that the service could be fast, but it won't be very good and it won't be very cheap. And then the last one is that it is cheap, but it won't be fast and it won't be that good. So which one do you take? Which service do you take? You can reflect on it, but this is what we are saying. Fit-for-purpose land administration does not provide the best solution. I know that surveyors here, you have been told that you have to use the most precise and get accuracy of centimeters. This is not what we are talking about in fit-for-purpose land administration. But what we are saying is, can you use modern technologies, the satellite imagery, the orthophotos, and the GNSS, the low-cost GNSS, so that you map the whole country for the purpose of securing land rights for all, and then create a flexible system which you can upgrade for different purposes over time. And this is what everybody has done. That's what the Europeans did. They started with a very basic cadastre system. I'm sure you have studied the history of cadastre. They started with very basic cadastral systems, and they have been able to progressively improve them over time. What we are saying is we cannot postpone securing land rights for all because it underpins national development. What we are actually delaying is national development. So if we must achieve the National Development Plan 3, we must prioritize securing of land rights for all. It's a task for today and not tomorrow. And I conclude by telling you that land administration and land management is about people. So whatever you do, always think about the future generations, because those are the ones you are supposed to make a better world for. I stop here. I thank you for listening.
Wow, 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 wow. A bigger applause for Mr. Simon Peter. Do we have any questions? One or two question or comment for Mr. Mwesije? So the points have been driven home. Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Mwesije. I think this is a wake-up call to all. You know, when he was speaking, I kept reflecting on the number of students that come. I don't have something to do for research. Do you know how many topics that could come from this particular presentation? Students. Okay, let's leave alone the topics for research here. But when you leave here, there is so much potential you could get involved in. We are only trying to say that we are the privileged few who are a cream of the country, and we must position ourselves to take action. Okay? There are very many people disadvantaged in the villages. They don't have how to help. But let us not stop on the degree that you get, but please position yourselves to take action and create a difference. Thank you very much, Mr. Mwesije, and I hope that we have taken heed and we are going to henceforth position ourselves as a school of built environment to create a difference. In terms of our programming, I hope the students are registering. We have registration sheets going on. You know the catch with registration, right? So please register on those forms they have provided for us. We are going to have one more presentation, as brief as it can be, and then we can take a break and start the other session. So the next presenter is going to be Mr. Obali Godwin. He's not very new to most of us, I believe also. Mr. Obali Godwin, you're welcome. Mr. Obali Godwin is a registered valuation surveyor of Uganda, and he's an expert in real estate and valuation. He's a lecturer of valuation surveying. He's also a director at Vals Consult Limited, a member of board of valuers with Department of Asian Property Custodian Board. He's also passionate about using his skills to impact young lives in the education sector and particularly in the land sector. So we are privileged. Okay.
So good morning, everyone. I've already been introduced, but if I may introduce myself, I think my name is Godwin. Godwin Obali is my name. And like the person who introduced me stated, I'm a registered valuation surveyor by profession. I teach land economic students and in the Department of Valuation. So just to be as quick as possible, this presentation should have come before Mr. Mwesije's presentation, but because of things that kept me a little busy, I apologize for coming late, but we ought to have had this presentation much more earlier. So mine is going to be basically talking to you about research, and we will talk about how we can integrate our built environment research into other professions, and we look at how it has impacted the research, the industry at large. So I'm going to involve a little bit of discussion session with you students, and at the end of it all, what we need to know is we need to understand what research is. I'm not going to project anything, so what you really have to get from me is be attentive, and then you get one or two things from this session. So like I said earlier, we are going to talk about research. If I may ask one or two or three students, what do you understand by research? Amisi? Yes, you.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
What I understand by research is is like get an idea about something, find out if at all it is applicable to the society, and how it can be applied to the society.
Okay, thank you. The lady in green? Yes, you. Light green.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rosemary. So, research, I think research is being given a topic, whether then you go, even if you have no idea, you go, maybe you read about it, consult people, and you get to know about that topic you're researching about. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot to participants. So what I want you to know is that whether you are, you should know that in life you either doing research voluntarily or involuntarily. Now, involuntarily would be you're a parent. Each and every day you have to look out and find out for your children. You need to find out better ways of how to better their lives. That's in itself a research. That is involuntary. Then, of course, voluntarily is like what the students have mentioned. You literally look out for solutions to problems that are readily available, okay? So what we are going to do right now is to basically understand what research is. Research is literally getting an idea, like the students have mentioned, then you provide solutions for it. You're looking at what is the problem that is, society is facing. And then you are looking at steps that you have to take in order to provide relevant solutions in regards to the problem that is at hand. Okay? So researches normally would involve you having methods. You need to have a methodology on how you're going to, first of all, describe what the problem is, what are the specific objectives that are there in order to come out with valuable solutions to the research that you're looking at. So in this sense, what we're going to look at today is we're going to find out the importance. What are the importance of research? What does the research help you with? So researchers will normally enable you to achieve certain goals you would have not achieved if you don't do a research. You've seen many times most companies that want to really perform perfectly and successfully, what they literally do is they will go onto the market, find out how the products that they are providing for the consumers are performing, and then look at how better they can make those products to perform much better in regards to their competitors. So that is one of it. With the research, so a research will normally give you an aspect of you achieving the goals to which you've set your products or your business that you're doing. Then the other thing is researchers normally will enable you get new ideas and new facts, because each and every day there's something that is happening in form of there's a problem that arises because of you having to do A, B, C in terms of tasks. So every day someone has a new idea of maybe doing surveying. You've seen this book that we have here. There is normally a certain way one would want to carry out survey and get to it that the minimal error that I'm getting is either 2 or is minimal. Yeah. So with that itself, what it gives you is it sets unto you new ideas and new facts that you need to look at in order to perform the task that you have. Okay. And then the other thing that you need to know of is research normally gives you a better understanding each and every day of complex problems that you would look out for. So it gives you, it enables you to create new knowledge on how to either do valuations. Now we have these days what we call the automated valuation applications. So because we realized that if we go to do rating works, you have multitude of individuals, but how will you keep on each and every year or after every 5 years trying to update your data? So you need to develop applications, but you can only develop applications by getting to do research. Yeah. So the other thing is research also helps you understand whether as a surveyor the resolutions you've made to do a given task is working or not. So it helps you detect, it helps you investigate each and every steps that you put to do a given task chronologically and come out with a decision whether that is working or not. Okay. And then the other thing also, when you do research, it helps you build credibility as a person. So you've seen so much that many researchers receive grants and funds to do what we saw Ms. Samuel Sije doing here in regards to having to, in about 10 years, every title should be registered of the sort. So it gives you credibility, but at the end also what it does to you literally is it improves your ability as a person to earn much more. Okay, so that is what research also does. But what you should know literally is that with research, as I come to the conclusion of this, when you're doing a research, it's a very broad concept. It requires almost a lot of a person to dictate their entire span of time to look at what can I improve that has not been done out there in order to have certain qualities of work that is that I am producing to be better than what is out there. So when you're doing research, you should be very critical, one, about the methods that have been employed. You have to be very critical about what have been the shortfalls of those methods that have been employed and how better you can have it. So now bringing that, like I said earlier, it would not be in any way better to talk to you about to talk about integration of built environment research into other professions and how it works or how it has impacted without knowing what a research is. So now that we have known what a research is, you know, School of Built Environment has various disciplines. There is architects, there's surveyors, there's valuers, building economists, and the likes. And the previous presenter stated earlier that as you go to the field, what normally will happen is that you'll realize that a valuer cannot go to value a property without the aid of a surveyor. Yeah? So we need to integrate both our research and work basis right at the university, even before we go out there, because without interdependence, we cannot do work. Then also, he mentioned earlier that architects majorly base their works on cost estimators. Cost estimators are QSs. They estimate cost of property, of building a given piece of parcel. So we have to relate so much. And that in itself, at the end of it all, if we get to know that our codependency depends on us getting to know what the other professional does, then the work that we are going to produce and give out to the clients will be one thing that is that has been very well thought of, and nothing has been left untouched. So with that, basically, what I have to tell you is, as you're studying, you need to know the relevance of the various professionals within your school, the quantity surveyor, the architect, the valuer, such that by the time you come to your fourth year, you very well know that as I go to the field, I have to depend on this person in A, B, C, D. So the most important, if not what it is you're studying for right now in regards to research, is once you finish up with the research, you will of course have employment out there. So research as well is also a requirement for you as you're doing your course to as one that you need to carry out. So with these few remarks that I've made, I would like to thank you for listening, and I'm so grateful to have been part of this. And research is very key each and every day. You might not know you're doing it, but you're actually doing it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Godwin Obali. I believe we have learned one or two things from his presentation. I know many of us are going to look for jobs, right, after here. But actually, research is one of the avenues you can make a lot of money. The only problem is that it's for the privileged few who are able to work hard and get out of the many, get out of the crowds, okay? So I pray that 70% of us are able to take up this mantle. And because you're at university, that is how you're supposed to position yourself. Thank you so much, Mr. Godwin. For now, we are going to take a break for 20 minutes. It is 11:25. So we are coming back at 11 what? 45, right? 11:45, we are back here. So thank you so much, the morning session people. We would like to recognize the presence of some people amidst us, some visitors. I think I've seen Nathaniel Consult. We shall have a chance to maybe hear from you and know what you do. You're welcome to Kyambogo University School of Beauty Environment. And is there any other person I've not mentioned who are here who are not staff and students? All right, thank you very much. So, a break. See you at 11:45. The visitors, please come with me. The visitors. Abalala mummanyi si kyekyo. We are usual, not so. You're just becoming nice to visitors. Thank you. Plus all presenters, please, if you're a student and you're presenting, please, you're my visitor today, so come with me.
for Duncan, doing land surveying in year 4. Hope I'm audible enough. My research topic is, or it was, developing a geoportal, enhance special data accessibility. So someone might ask, what's a geoportal? And why a geoportal? The first presenter was talking about having different institutions. Let's say NEMA, UBOS, UNRA, having datasets, but they're housing them in their own institutions. So we're looking at having a geoportal, which is a platform for easy access. Different data providers avail to the portal designer, avail them to the students and institutions for use. So one will ask, why a geoportal? Basically because we are seeing spatial data being necessary in every sector that we are dealing in. That is planning, development, and even research. Year 4 students or even year 3 students who are doing coursework, you can bear me witness. You are given coursework to do, or you are given some research to attempt, but you are facing challenges of accessing data sets. What is that with duplication? So we are saying, after developing a geoportal, which is to avail data sets to different spatial data users, this will solve a problem of social data inaccessibility. So we are seeing in the world today about 80% of the information that is required for planning and decision making is spatial in nature. And these are presented as maps. Case in point is 7th July last year, our second lockdown. The president showed you why we are going to a second lockdown by using maps. So the decision was taken due to different places that had high values of COVID-19. This came about due to the information that was available to him, or to the analysts, GIS now, come up with maps. But we are seeing in a country, Uganda, we are seeing different institutions, as you are seeing this map, it's showing you, when you get data from UBOS, and another one from Lands Department, and you overlay, you find there is a shift or variation. This is the point I'm talking about the first presenter. Different institutions are housing datasets, but they are in their own documentation systems. You find one is using ARC 1960, and is using Labiche 84. So you as a user, it becomes difficult for you to do analysis, simply because, yes, you might say, I'll change it to ARC, if it is in W84, but which parameters are you using? So you find there is that shift that is caused due to different institutions housing their own data sets. So we are seeing there has been a development for long where they want to develop our own SDI, Special Data Infrastructure. But ever since it was talked about, it stopped there. Because the plan was from 2011-15, we should be having our own SDI. What is this relevancy? To help us access these data sets. But it was not what? Implemented. So we are facing a challenge of inaccessibility of some special data sets, and even knowledge. Is it existing? If I may ask you, you might not know that we have data about roads. We have data about electricity power lines. We have data about biomass. You don't know. But if we have a portal which can avail this, then it creates awareness and usage becomes easy. So we are seeing a scenario where different people are going to different open source services, let's say Google Earth or Landsat, to get data sets. How? They are getting images from Google Earth, they are digitizing. They are digitizing roads. But this data is what? Is existing. So this takes me to my problem statement. So we are seeing an increase in data collection by different ministries. But these data sets, they are still being stored in their silos or these institutions. So for one to access them, you have to do a physical visit. So it means it is creating a gap of one does not know if it is available, and also how can I access it. So that research that has been done, it has mainly focused on data interoperability, that is data exchange, and then the feasibility study for our own social data infrastructure. But looking at that, then it leaves a gap of how can one easily access these data sets that they are talking about, or how can one easily access data sets from different ministries. So therefore, research was intending at developing a geoportal to enhance social data accessibility. But to achieve this, I had 3 specific objectives. One was to ascertain the condition of social data documentation. Why was it necessary? You can't develop a portal without knowing if I'm doing a portal of house data sets, how are they? Is metadata complete? Are they, talk about metadata, talk about the documentation. Are they using the same semantics in the naming of this information? Are they using the same coding systems? So this was to help us understand the status of social data or the documentation part of social data. Then from there, it was to develop a web-based geoportal. Now to house data sets itself. Then from designing it, then we had to do an evaluation to understand what we have designed. Is it going to impact on social access or it won't? And these 3 led us to our main objective, which was to develop a geoportal to enhance social data accessibility. To achieve those objectives, they are broken down into two methodology of 3 phases. One was the situation phase analysis, that was for objective 1. Then 2, a design phase. This one was the evaluation phase. Under situation analysis, this one was to ascertain the condition of social data documentation. This involved data inspection. Some institutions would give you opportunity to sit on their database, on their computers, analyze and see how their asset is in social data documentation and metadata. Another one was document study. As we all know, the first point I was talking about initially having maps, hard copy maps. The document study was about analyzing metadata that is on hard copy and also understanding the state as a country. How are we in terms of documentation of our social data sets? Then the question here was to give us a full insight of how these relevant institutions, then we are talking about the GIS specialists, how are they seeing their institutions in terms of social data documentation. Second objective, which was the designing of a web-based portal, one was a web setup. This one involved one understanding which server can I use to host my portal. So we looked at Apache Tomcat simply because it is an open source and it is JavaScript. Being JavaScript and being Apache Tomcat, it means it can house GeoServer to help me publish my datasets. Then home configuration. Since I was using Apache Tomcat, it means the language is JavaScript. So to do home configuration, I needed an XG, XTS, JavaScript library to help me in configuring my homepage. Okay, the homepage here meaning you're having a portal but with different tabs or different panels, as I'm going to see in the experimentation. The data download tab still was also came about by using an EXT, GS library. All these are open source libraries, so it means you can easily access them and they can work with JavaScript language. Then spatial querying. This is a command still by EXT. So it was designing a query to help us. You see, different portals are existing, yes, but what do they have? If you can be a witness, if you go to GSGS, you're getting an answered image. You don't have an opportunity to query that image or to create a shapefile. It's saying on Google Earth Engine. What you do is you get the data, not the way it is. You can't query a simple option or a simple point that you want to focus on. Then you have populating geoportal. Here is after designing a geoportal, then what next is populating it, putting datasets on the portal. So mainly here, after having datasets, we had to do a batch projection. What do I mean? The first one I said, NEMA has datasets, UBOS does, UNRA does. But when you have to look at them, they're in different coding systems. But since I was using base maps, which are global, there was a requirement to transfer them from ARC to WS84 to fit the base map for easy analysis and overlay. Then lastly was the testing of a geoportal. This would lead us to the third objective, which was evaluation. To achieve this, different special data users and students here were approached, showed the portal, and had a feel about the portal to help us evaluate if this job portal in actual sense will improve on that special data accessibility. So results for objective 1, that is ascertaining the condition of documentation of social data. This was broken down into 4 variables. One being methods of collections, then metadata itself, then storage formats, and accessibility. So looking at methods of collections, we are seeing most institutions using surveying and digitizing acquire these data sets. But they are coded differently. You find UBOS having data sets for administrative boundaries for districts, calling it districts. You find NEMA calling it DST. You find another institution calling it D. So it becomes hard for one when you're doing analysis or you're doing querying to easily get this data. You might put district, but you are using NEMA data sets. So you won't get the results. So their coding is different according to how their specialists decide to code them. So there's another one which is coordinate systems. This one has been sung on before and I'm thinking about it. As you are seeing on the map, 50% of institutions are using WS84. Others are using ARC. But you find some private institutions, they have their own coded systems that they designed to use. So it becomes hard for one to use data sets for analysis unless you have the back-end information about the data collected or documented. So, as for data users, you find, I've talked about different institutions. Some institutions acquire data sets from different institutions. Here I'm talking about, you find water using data sets from where? From NEMA for their own analysis. So, not every institution is creating, but some do acquire from other institutions that do produce data sets. When you look at the second variable, which is metadata, we find 71% of institutions, they don't have specialized people to handle metadata. And we know special data, to be of use, you require metadata. But the challenge is, most institutions say if you are collecting special data, then you are required to do what? To update or create metadata. And this has led to having different institutions having their own standards. You find institutions, one is using ISO, another is using FDG, another is using WIN. Simply because people handling metadata creation and updating, they are not specialized. So whatever they fall on, whatever they come across is what they use. And when you dig deep through a special data inspection, you find, yes, the most used is 115. But your question is it complete? So you find, or you found out that 40% of these institutions, so 58% of these institutions, they are complete only on 40%. This means people that are creating social data sets, they only fill in the specific information, leaving other contents of the standard incomplete. So another thing was, if it's complete or not complete, do they update its metadata or do they update their data sets? And what we found out was they only update according to the need and capacity. Someone will only update not annually or yearly, or not annually or after a month or 3 months, simply because they tell you finances are low. So what you do is, if there is need for updating spreadsheets, it's when we do what? When we do update. Storage formats. You find most institutions are using databases and shapefiles and JTIF to store these data sets. So the question is, how can you, a special data user, access these special data sets? This is just the fifth variable, which is accessibility. These institutions, they have different sharing policies. When you go to UBOS, don't have the same policies for sharing data sets as the same as water. You might go to UBOS and it takes you 3 or 4 months to get data sets. But you happen to go to NEMA and it takes you 1 day, simply because each institution has their own sharing policies. Then data types. If NEMA has data sets, it has to. If UBOS has data sets, it has to, restricted and unrestricted. But that's why you find some institutions have only unrestricted data sets. So all we are seeing is data is available, but how can we access it? If it is restricted, then it means even you as a special data user, you are being restricted. It's what? Its use. Then open source platforms. This was meant to assess and see. These institutions, they have online platforms where one in Arua can easily get access about roads and use them, unlike coming where to UNRA to acquire them. So you find only 29% of these institutions do have online platforms for social data accessibility. That was objective 1. Going to objective 2, which was the development of what? Of a geoportal. So successfully a portal was developed, but it has different bars or different panels. As we are seeing, this is a title bar. They are describing a portal. Then you have a status bar, which has 5 windows. One being the introduction, then the map, meteorological data, metadata, and download. We have a map view. Portals are existing, but they lack the instance of map view. When you go to a website, let's say for UBOS, they will avail you data sets, but you can't have that field or that acknowledgement. Before you download data sets for district, how are they looking like? How do they overlay on other base maps or another data sets? So the instance of having a map view was one using data sets to have first that knowledge. I'm downloading this data, it's looking like this, I can use it for this purpose. Then there's a legend, which will help in overlaying, then an overview map. So overview map helps you to see where you are on your continent basis. Then there's a vertical scroll bar, which allows you to traverse through different layers on the portal, and then the layer panel, which houses these layers. So you are seeing on the features of the geoportal, we are having the window or the status bar, which has 5 windows: introduction, map view, and meteorological data, download, and metadata. We shall see more in the practical part of it about these features, since time has passed spent. So let me take you through a small practical about the geoportal, then we can do the final objective, which is evaluation of this portal. Because there's no way you can evaluate without seeing what actually the portal does. So this is a portal, but since it's not yet published, it is a local host. So it is only the designer who can have the access to it. So this portal has 5 windows, I've told you. Introduction window. This gives you a small brief about the portal and its instance of the design. Then you have the map window. This is where the most logic or the most emphasis is for social data users. As I've told you, portals are existing, but most portals that we are seeing, they don't have the map view window. They only avail you data sets for download. So the instance was, how about one has a portal where one can view before downloading and know what I'm downloading. So in this case, we have different layers. These are the base maps, and these are the layers. So let us try to look at the regions as datasets on the portal. So these are regions, but they are obstructing the behind part. So what you can do, you can easily change the opacity that you can view what is behind on the portal. So by doing this, it means I'm able to do a small analysis, seeing the base maps and also datasets that I'm putting what on the portal. So you are seeing an overlay of regions and banks. These are banks. One might ask, how can I know that these are banks? By opening this legend, this is a legend bar. So it shows you what is active on the what? On the portal. We are seeing regions are active, then banks are active. You can even put restaurants. So one might say, I am seeing only one bank in Masaka. It is not one bank, but when you zoom in, then you see a variety of them after zooming in. That's the first one, which is overlaying and the legend part of it. So Then we have what we call a querying panel. So you have a portal running. Someone may say, I want only to focus on northern region. How can I easily so northern region is? So, but as I was doing initially, you will find datasets, say for NEMA, they are in different coding. One calls regions, others call it RGN. So you have to be keen when getting data. In this case, I'm looking at regions as my active layer. So when I look for region boundaries, I can key in they are named region. So here I put equal sign, so I can search. Let us say northern region. So when I press search, it is searching for northern region on my active datasets. So spelling is wrong. Yeah. The easy way to identify the spelling or the attribute is by using this identify key. You can click here, then you find what is it called in actual sense. By clicking an identify key and I click here, then it will bring me attribute. So you see the naming is northern region. So it has refused to work simply because of wrong spelling. So I can click, put it off, then come, let us say western region. I hope this time the spelling is right. So when you search, you see, let's first close this. You are seeing it has highlighted the what? The western region out of other regions on what? On the map view. That is the what we call the query part of it. We are querying datasets without mainly searching manually. Then we have what we call an overview. This is an overview, as I've told you. It shows you the location of where you are on the continent basis. Then is what we call a go-to coordinate. If I have my coordinates, then I can search the place and takes me straight where I want to view instantly. Then is what we call a bookmark. This bookmark helps you in case you are doing analysis and you want to close off your analysis and do other things. Then let us assume we are here. We are doing a small analysis. Internet. Okay, we are in Lecture now currently. So what you can do is go to your bookmark, name it Lecture. So you can add it to your bookmark. So adding it to the bookmark, it means even if I zoom out, maybe I say I go to Juba, then I can go back to my bookmarks, open them, then click on Lecture. What it does, it takes you straight to Lecture. So you are seeing different bookmarks. The City Square, I can click here, then it takes me straight to City Square. It means when I bring my analysis and I close off, when I come back to continue where I stopped, it does not require me to again look for where I was initially. Just bookmark your information. When you come back, open the bookmark, then straight away continue the analysis. Another thing is, after doing analysis, assuming you have been doing analysis, you have been overlaying districts, so regions and banks in the country, and it's a simple analysis or it's a simple presentation, then you can print this and save it as a PDF by coming to the print preview here, the print screen. So when you print a screen, then it saves it as a PDF automatically. Then you can use it for your further either report or information that you want to use it for. So leave along that. Pardon, wait. This is 68. Sorry. Let's see the last part of the portal. First open. Let's press it again. So the last part of it, yeah, I'm almost done with it. We have been looking at the map window. We have a meteorological data window. This shows you the rainfall of the country in the last 10 years. So if one wants to have these datasets on their hands and do some more analysis, what you can do is you can export it as an Excel. After exporting it, it has downloaded. So all you do is open it in your Excel and carry out your analysis. So this data is for the whole country for the last 10 years. That is rainfall data, which is now under the meteorological datasets. So the meteorological window. The second last window is the download window. You want to download the datasets, not use them on the what? On the portal. Let's say you are using ArcMap or you're using QGIS. What you do is you are free, you can click on download. So it downloads the shapefile directly. It has every information that you require. So after showing different people how the portal works, how it is functioning, so we came up with the final objective, which was evaluating this portal. But since it is a development or a design or an innovation, then the instance was to use a theory for innovation. And this was the definition of innovation theory, which has 5 variables. One is relative advantage, complexity, communicability, tolerability, and compatibility. The first variable being relative advantage. Relative advantage question is, we have seen a geoportal. Do you think it can improve the means of data access? And by the answers that we got from the questionnaire, 68% of them agreed that this geoportal, once published and available to different users, then it can surely improve the accessibility. Since even if you are in Arua, you can have datasets instead of moving to different stations. The next one being complexity. Question is, do you find this geoportal easy to use? Do you find its interface easy to use? And 72% of the interviewed people agreed to it. That hence, once one is available to this geoportal, they can easily use it without having hard complications. Next one was triability. You know, every innovation, before you put it out, you have to first try it out. First understand, can it work? So 47% of them agreed that it can be worked, though 24 refused. This therefore is mainly because these different institutions do believe that their datasets are not for commercial use. But when you look at the instance of social data is to help us in doing research. So this can be easily amended if you put maybe policies upon the usage of these social datasets. Then there is observability, which was trying to see what has been designed. Can it be demonstrated? Can the variables be seen or tangible? And 82% were in total agreement with that. Lastly, it was compatibility. We are seeing if this platform can ease searching and accessing. If you have your data on a portal, it does not require you to first look for Uganda or first look for Kampala, yet you have districts, you can use the query and get to see Kampala instantly. So 54% of them are in agreement since the portal has that capacity to do a search instantly. Then when we go to the conclusions, we are seeing many institutions producing datasets, and they are using them in a different coding. So after developing a geoportal successfully that is meant to solve social data accessibility, the most important thing was implementing it to do what? To help people access datasets. But after implementing, one will say, how can this be the use of semantics and the use of having different policies? So recommendations are, we recommend different organizations or the country first to create a special data committee which can lay down different policies and procedures and standards for special data collection and creation. Here meaning, let us have a common standard of collecting datasets. If you're using WC84, let us all use what? WC84. If you're having sharing policies, let them be uniform. Easy what? Access. Next one was, we call upon organizations to avail these datasets to different researchers. If one has developed a geoportal, kindly avail datasets for what? For publicating. You find a scenario I only have references from 4 institutions, yet then we are visited. Why? The others have different sharing policies. But once we have a common policy, then it means one can easily do what? Populate the portal and make it of use. Lastly, those of you who are doing research, my brothers and sisters, one should look furthermore on the development of a geoportal, enhance further analysis. Let's say hotspot analysis or social source analysis, because there's still a lot to discover under development of geoportals. Thank you so much for your time. That's what I had for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Duncan, for your presentation. Mind you, Duncan is doing his final year research presentation. That was a correction. So we are going to request about 2 comments from the audience, and then some comments from the panelists, and then we shall, so any comment from the...
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katans Kriyon. I'm in 3rd year doing land economics. Duncan, on personal level, is my friend and a brother. Thank you for inspiring me. I think I'm in that direction. Though me, I will be using national ID. I think you have the best idea, and how I wish the university leadership can lead you to state this thing can be both. Thank you.
Duncan, thank you so much.
Madam.
I have a number of points.
Yes, please.
You're doing a final year research.
Yes, please.
And you're supposed to be assessed on this research.
Yes, please.
Number 1,
yes,
this goes for everyone. You're personalizing this work. In research, we don't personalize. Kindly improve that. Number 2, you are doing a study about spatial data accessibility. And you're using a geoportal to enhance spatial data accessibility. However, the challenge I'm seeing with your work, you want to share your work instead of creating accessibility. When we are creating accessibility, we tell people that this is where the data is found. We don't give people our work. That is why the other 24% is saying, no, we cannot use it because there's a certain component you showed them or you never showed them, which is metadata. And metadata is very key in your study because we're supposed to see who has the rights on this data. How can we contact the person? What is the accuracy capability of this data? When was it collected? The lineage, completeness, the different aspects of spatial data quality. And I think that is very key in your work, and it was missing. So I want you to try to include it in the second objective. When you're discussing the second objective, kindly include how you can use the geoportal to show us metadata and how that metadata can be used in accessing this data. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. For the sake of metadata, maybe because I need to explain about the metadata window, but there is a window on the geoportal which has metadata itself. So when you want data sets, then you can easily export it to Excel, then you find the information. That's how I try to embed it in, so that when one data set, let's say for Uganda data sets, then you easily export the Excel, then you have the metadata itself on your laptop. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. So, Duncan, mine is first. I can tell that you have put a good and considerable amount of time in preparing that. So, kudos, and if there are any classmates here, you should probably clap for Duncan and probably pick a point. My second point, however, and this goes specifically to you, as a designer and one with a privilege of the back end, there's some information that you're privy to that you're not so openly sharing. So, and I know you're having local hosting capabilities currently, but there are some, I could call them maybe exceptional, for lack of a better word, let me stick to the word challenges as one with a backend access with local hosting privileges, what would you, maybe 2 or 3 challenges that you can pinpoint and say, there's this, and there's this?
The main one is, you see, this job board has data sets to operate it. But the main challenge was, the code I'm using, it is in JavaScript. But for one to download a specific information, let's say if I want to download only Kampala, that requires having JavaScript with Python. The challenge I faced was having a translator between Python and JavaScript to help me download a specific information, which I'm trying to find out now. The next one was some libraries are not open. So them being not open, there are some tasks one can't easily implement. So you find most that came to when you go to chats. Chats, I want to have a window for chats. But having a window for chats, you find JATJX for JavaScript has little capabilities compared to the other. So which required more research or more understanding of other languages, which would not be possible to the short time that we had. So mainly we relied on having these ones with the different regions of having different languages in a shorter period of time, which will not be possible. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, the panelists and the comments from the audience. I know there are a lot that we want to ask him. Unfortunately, he's lucky that we don't have time. So we reserve those comments till later. Duncan is part of us. He's here. If you want anything from him, please reach out to him. Otherwise, Duncan, thank you very much for the effort, and I wish you luck.
Thank you, madam, and thank you for the positive audience.
So I think without further ado, I'll request the next presenter, who is supposed to be Mr. Mukono Robinson. He's a student of quantity surveying, presenting to us structural behaviors of filling materials, sustainable low-cost housing, earthwork construction. Wow. Robinson, we have 20 minutes. Please suppress as much as you can.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mukono Castain Robinson. I am an alumni as contacted by my former lecturer, Mr. Aino Migisha Shafiq, to come and present at the conference. I graduated in 2019, and this was my final year research. Okay. I hope this is all clear to everyone in the room. Okay. So my research was about the effect of the different fill materials on the structural behavior of earthbags in Budaka district, Uganda. Now, just to bring the audience up to speed, earthbags is what you would see in the image up here. I know it looks all thrilling and not all very clear, but those are sacks filled with soil. They are used to construct houses. So my research was basically to find out the nature, the effect of the different soil materials that is put in the sacks there. So we'll jump right into it. So the construction industry is undoubtedly undoubtedly takes a big share of the consumption globally. I'm talking about the material-wise. Most of the materials used for construction are extracted from the ground and the earth. So, according to Feng and Show from 2019, they established that the construction industry takes on the big share of the construction industry. Approximately 50% of global materials are used by the construction industry, and it is known for its global energy usage that lies at about 40%, according to Copenhagen Research Institute in 2014. With as the nations accumulate wealth, as you could look at the sustainable economies like, let's say, USA and Canada, the research into green building and green technologies of how to improve and enhance housing keeps on growing. People want to do more sustainable housing, and green housing ideas are coming up every now and then. So, Africa and Latin America currently stands out as continents experiencing a great deal of housing shortages. I know there are several, according to Obu is a researcher from Nigeria who established that despite the try to establish sustainable housing in Africa, they still they've tried to put up public housing schemes, but they are still not successful. So we still need a green building technology that is cheap and accessible to many. So Bedford says in his research that Africa and Latin America currently stands out as continents experiencing a great deal of housing shortages, mainly due to significant increase in populations. I mean, the populations around Africa keep growing. Look at Uganda, for example. I believe our population for the last 10 years has grown by like 5 more, even more. In Uganda alone, the housing deficit stood at 2.4 million housing units. This was 2020, 2 years ago. 2.4 million people were assumed in an article by Daily Monitor to have no sustainable housing grounds or habitats. According to the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development Statistical Abstract in 2008, 71% of housing stock nationally is surviving with temporary materials, 11% semi-permanent, and 18% stands the test to permanence. So what this means is that 18% of the population in Uganda, according to Ministry of Lands and Housing and Urban Development, 18% of the structures that we have are the only ones that can stand the test of being declared permanent structures, which means the rest, which is about 80%, are structures that you look at and they are made out of non-permanent materials. The statistics continue to say that about 44% of households in Uganda stayed in dwellings with permanent materials. Now, the materials that they were talking about as permanent materials were stabilized bricks or burnt bricks, cement blocks, stone masonry, and 73% of these were found in urban areas, which means the rural areas are still doing badly regarding the use of sustainable materials for construction. Schroeder in 2016 assessed the possibility of opening up more natural earth materials based on literatures of Rincon et al. From 2020, Burns in 2016, Santos in 2009, Rammed earth construction. So he looked at several, as I've outlined the researches that he was looking at, and in his analysis while looking at these researches, he was trying to to do some analysis on the mechanical properties of the compression and flux flow and shear of gray clay bricks. And nearly 40% of, in his analysis of the existing materials that are used for construction, he says nearly 40% of the world's staying structures are constructed out of earth-based material. I think we all believe that, we all agree on this, that if you move around the world, most structures are based on materials that are extracted from the earth, from the soil. So now the question comes to how sustainable these materials are, what technique you're using them, what technique you're using to construct the structures with these materials, and how cost effective it is. That's where the technique of earthbag building comes in. In a bid to utilize more sustainable materials, earthbag construction performs and stands highly, especially with the cost-effective tendency and the fast lane timeline of construction. I mean, a structure like, for example, the one in the middle there is sacks filled with soil. Putting it up can take up to like a week, and a home is finished. So it is really effective, and it's basically filling the sack with soil and setting them up according to the plan that you have. So it is time conscious, it is cheap. Now the question is whether it is sustainable. In these images are some famous projects that have been done with earthbags. The first one is built by Neda Khalid. The second one was built by, is a project in India which was done by Anon. And the first one was done by a researcher called Minke. However, with all those good aspects and everything, with all those things being said, like I mentioned here, with all the glitters that there is, there's still uncertainty on which kind of fill or which kind of soil you have to put in the sacks for this structure to be sustainable. Now that's where my research was. According to Jaeger and Zemkoza in 2015, they say the common material mix to use in earthen structures is 25% to 30% of clay, and the sandy and the silt take up 70 to 75% of the components in the sack. But however, this is also what David Eaton, who attempted rammed earth research, says. He says usually a composition of 30% clay and 70% rammed earth is what you would call sustainable for most earthen structures. However, on a project which was done in Namibia, in Africa, there was stabilization of the earth, of the soil which was in the place. They added cement to the soil. They were putting they used the mixed ratio of 1 to 9, which creates an alternate mixture to what most researchers had been putting up. In Uganda, the instances where these structures have been done, there's a structure which has been built with earthbags, which was done in Karamoja, and from a news blog for greenhousing, they used the soils from the ground, and in the blog they talked about adding extra stones to the soil on the ground, on the bags touching the ground surface, which is still contrary to what the previous researchers had mentioned. In another, there is a house which was built out of this earthbag technology along the shores of Lake Victoria, and this was actually premiered on a news bulletin, and they talked about the soils that were used being from an anthill. Now, from the antics of the soils that are usually in the anthill, they're usually more fine particles which are clay, which have clay-like properties. So if you're using soil from an anthill, it means you're altering the proportion, which is usually the 70% of sand and silt and 30% clay. So all those create questions on what exactly is supposed to be inside these bags. So in the most recent studies by Sampion in 2021, they used cassava wastewater. This is still for stabilization of the soil in Uganda, with the ever-increasing shortages of houses, especially in rural areas. Like I've given the statistics from the Ministry of Lands. 71% of housings are sustainable, and most of these are in the urban areas. So the rural areas are really doing badly. They need something that is sustainable and structurally sound. So so basically what I was doing is in my research as trying to bridge the gap on which soil and combinations to use. So this was attained by establishing the proportion of sand, silt, and clay with the soils as potential fields for the earthbags. Basically, you go to the place. I went to the place in the bid to solve this mystery. I was trying to find out what I would say was my objectives. To find out the compressive strength, to find out the composition of the soils in the place there, the plasticity index of the soil combinations in a place where you would want to set up these earthbags. And in my research, I was basing all my data and sample collection from a place called Budaka district in eastern Uganda. So for my research, I selected a sack, which is 250 millimeters by 300. This was procured from a local supplier. The samples that I used to fill in the bags prior to making the research were 4. So when I reached Budaka, I collected 4 samples from 4 different points. Now, I labeled the samples A, B, C, D, as you can see here. Before collection of these samples, top vegetable soil was cleared and avoided because it is recommended in most earthen structure literature. Clay soils for proportioning so as to alter the variance of clay in all these samples that I picked from Budaka. And this clay soil, I bought it from Kajansi. So from the samples that I collected, what I was trying to do was to alter, to have a different combination of the clay in the samples that I have. I wanted to have 8 samples which have 30% clay and 70% sand and silt. Another 8 samples with 10% clay and 90% sand and silt. Another 8 samples with 50% clay and 50% sand and silt. Then a final one with 70% clay and 30% sand and silt. That was me trying to batch the small bags to have the constituents of 30% and to have those proportions that I had mentioned earlier on. This was done using a calibrated bucket. I made a bucket with calibrations from 1 to 10, which were equal, and I used them to batch these mixtures. Like you can see here, there is some clay and there is some natural soil that I had collected from the place. The bags were filled up to about 4 out of 5 of their height, and then I sealed them 30 millimeters from the top edge, and random sampling was used. So I performed the tests of particle size distribution. This is to find out the composition of clay, sand, and silt in the soils that are in Budaka district. Like I'd mentioned, I collected 4 samples, A, B, C, and D. The moisture content, I also carried out the test to establish the moisture content. The compressive strength was carried out on all the samples that I had made. This is an image of compression of the earth bags. So the plasticity index was carried out for 16 samples as batched in the previous proportions. So trying to establish the cost per square meter of using these structures, I've given the size of the bags that I used, and in 1 square meter, there were 42 bags. each bag weighing 7.5 kg, the size that I had used. So in 1 square meter, you'd need 295 kgs, which is, now each bag of clay from Kajansi was costing 16,000. So if I need 294 kgs to fill 1 square meter, when 50 kgs cost this, I think you can find out the cost of the clay. This was established to be 29,000 for the cost per bag per square meter. This is since we are using 42 bags in 1 square meter, this is the cost for the bags themselves. Then with this formula, you can find out the cost you will spend on the clay, then the total cost of making 1 square meter of an earth bag wall would be the cost of buying the bags, the cost of buying the clay, plus the natural soil that you find in the locality, which is usually free of charge. So my sieve analysis, which was based on trying to establish the soil distributions in Budaka district, the results came out as A1, which was the clay and silt, was the mean for the 4 places where I collected the samples was significantly different. When I got the composition of clay, sand, and silt in all these places, the means were significantly different. The sand was also significantly different, and the gravel was significantly different. I used R Studio to analyze this statistics so that I established the significance of the difference in the means. The hydrometer analysis also shows that the clay, the silt, sand, and the gravel. Now this one, the sieve analysis does not usually give the composition of the silt and the clay separately. But with the hydrometer analysis, which is a more detailed kind of testing, you can find out the composition of the clay, the silt, the sand, and the gravel in the place. Using the textural triangle, it was established that the soils which are in Budaka, from the place where I picked my samples, were sandy loam. The compressive strength for test specimen T1 is which had 15% of clay. The T2 is one which had 30% of clay. T3 is one which had 40%, and T4 is one which had 50% of the clay. The maximum compressive strength was 4.77, and was for the mixture of 50% clay and 50% sand and silt. The minimum was T1, which had the least component of clay. Now, from the analysis of variance that I made, this compressive strength of all the samples that I made for the 4 different proportions were significantly different from each other. The highest compressive strength was T4 and the lowest was T1. T4 is the one which has the 50% clay. T1 is the one which has the 15% clay. The clay particles are highly cohesive and aid compaction. That is why the compressive strength of T4 was high and the one of T1 was low. Since no standards of construction exist, it is for this type of construction, using clay in my conclusions, using a higher composition of clay for earth bags is usually prone to expansion and contraction during different temperature timelines. So it is recommended that you try to find a mixture or a proportion of the clay and soil, which doesn't have so much clay, like let's say 30% of clay. From the results, the 50% composition is stronger than the 15% composition, but it's better to have the 30% because of the contraction and expanding behavior of clay in different seasons. The cost estimate shows that the 15% clay combination is cheapest because it has less clay, and the 50% clay combination is more expensive because it has more clay involved in stabilizing the soils. So it is still drifting towards the earlier proposals by the earlier researchers of earthen structures should be based on a 30% combination and 70% combination of clay and silt. So trying to wind up, in my recommendations, they still need to establish a standard moisture content range within which the soils should be when carrying out this kind of construction with earthbags. The compressive strength of earthbags after a certain time duration should also be tried out. In my tests, I was doing these things without any, I was doing the tests and the sampling without any consideration of the timeline. I fill the bag today and I do the test tomorrow. So there's need to find out the compressive strength behavior of these earthbags as time goes on. How is it after 2 months, 3 months? How it keeps changing with these different fill compositions. As I'm winding up, I would want just to show a sample that these structures have been done before in Uganda. This is the bulletin that I mentioned earlier on. You see, this is a house which was built here in Uganda with these earthbags, and the challenges they were mentioning were the bags being heavy. The construction takes about, they finish this house in less than 2 weeks, but handling the bags, you need some pulley systems and everything. So there's still some challenges surrounding this, aside from trying to establish what fill is actually good for it. But it is a good construction technique that needs to be looked more into to establish its sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukono Robinson. A hand of applause, a bigger one. I will allow only one comment from the audience. Only one comment from the audience. Okay, I'm going to choose a lady. The one who put her hand first, and then we shall have... yes, please. Keep it short, madam. We can hear you, I think. You want to come here? Please be fast.
Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon to you all. I would love to first thank the organizers of this. I would love to secondly thank the presenter. I think I should first, as you did your research, I also did my research from within. As we are here for a conference, but I think most of us are not comfortable. Is it so? Because we came here at 8 a.m. We are still here. We didn't have anything to eat. People left where they were living from to come for the conference.
Some of them I'm not able to answer. I'll take him to the. Let's get the other question from Dr. Emmanuel. You're not comfortable. I'm also not comfortable, by the way, but I manage.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, presenter. When I saw this topic, in particular, sustainability, low-cost housing, and the subject area of Bududa, I was fascinated, thinking that here we are with a housing problem in Budaka. Okay. Thanks for that clarification. All along I've been thinking Bududa. So Budaka is on Tirinyi Road. So one would wonder, what made you pick this sample space?
I personally come from Budaka, so I picked there because, I mean, why not help my own people if I'm going to do research?
That is very sad. Why I'm saying it's very sad, when we're doing research, we're doing for the betterment of knowledge and solving a problem.
Yes.
And it would be nice to target a space that will employ or experiment with your technology.
Yes.
Now, when you talk of low-cost housing and you couple it with sustainability, you need to first of all understand knowledge transfer and ask yourself, if I'm doing samples and I'm picking the clay from Kajansi, how sustainable is that? That's one. If I'm going to pick clay from another region to use on this sample and it's not localized, and yet I'm sure Budaka also has clay.
Yes.
So it must have been convenient for you that you can easily get it from here, but then it takes away the localization of the aspect of it. And then when you talk of low-cost housing, you have to understand what housing means before you even go to low-cost housing. So yes, it's nice that we have this experiment of the compression of the strength of the materials, but ask yourself, where am I going to get these bags? How reliable or constant can I get the sourcing of these bags? What is the lifespan of these bags? If I'm chief of Budaka and you want me to spread the gospel to my people, and you tell them, you know, if you use these bags, it's more sustainable than the way we've been using mud and water. You need to sell the idea much further than telling me I was able to get a bag from a sponsor. So it would be nice to channel, because yes, the truth of the matter is vernacular construction is expensive. That's the truth. However, we opt for it when we see pros of it, that, for example, there's no moisture seepage. For example, it's only using materials from the area. For example, it's earthquake prone. For example, I can, if in case of a disaster, I can pack up my bags and move them to another location. So such things outweigh the, and of course, technology transfer. So these are things that I would have wished to hear in your presentation in line with the topic that you used. Thank you.
Give a comment.
Okay, thank you very much. From the question of, I didn't really catch her name. The first question that came through, how do you prevent seepage of water into the earth bags? From the literature that I was able to review when doing the research, they were the first bags that you put on the ground. They were recommending that you fill them with maram material. Basically, some say use G45, G30 quality of maram. That's the literature, what they say. I never really experimented whether it prevents the seepage, but that's the literature I encountered during the research. From the last comment about the sustainability of the suppliers and the applicability of this particular research in Budaka itself, my picking of Budaka as my sample space is because it's one of the locality that I personally have seen longest. You see, when we live here in Kampala, you live somewhere for 2 years, then you go somewhere else. But if you go back to your hometown, it's always there. It's always the same for all life. So I picked that one because it is, I'd say, it is the one place where I literally knew more about the lifestyles of the people there, because it's the one place that I always go to constantly, same place. Now, about the supply of the bags, for the research, I bought the bags here because I was doing the research from here. Now, the sacks that we used, that I bought, were the usual ordinary sacks. And that, in a comment about, in a literature from a researcher called Pelly from USA, he was talking about how the compressive strength of the actual earth bags themselves is actually determined by the material used by the bag itself, the earth bag, the polythene bag itself. So that is also something that would really need to be looked into, how much of the compressive and structural soundness of the structure is based on the bag, the cavera itself. So that is also something that someone could look into. My main emphasis was on the clay variations, the proportions of the clay and the fill inside the bags. Whether they could be sustainably found in a locality, I think most of, this is my personal opinion, I didn't see any literature from it. Most of the villages around, because of Uganda is an agricultural economy, they actually store their foodstuffs in sacks. So I would want to believe that the supply of the sacks is there. And the sacks range from the cost of 500 shillings to 1,200. So I would want to believe that the people from the place where I had picked as my sample space can access the sacks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukono. Thank God that was the undergraduate research. You still have masters, you still have PhD, so you can measure all that sustainability. You can measure those points were very, very key. Please put them down, and that is a starting point for the next level. So 2 years from now, please come and tell us about sustainability as your further study. Thank you very much. Some concerns were raised about the discomfort. I think we are in the same room, and the discomfort cuts across. This is not a must. When you feel tired, you want to stretch a bit, you want to take something, please make a way, okay? We are all old people, isn't it? It's not a must that, you know, just march out, go and have a drink. If you miss 1 or 2, we shall update you when you come. We shall have these things uploaded on our website, you know. You will catch up. So please forgive us for anomalies. We work within the resources that we have. And yeah, thank you for agreeing to work with us. The next presenter is going to be Mr. Anthony Okudi, talking to us about enhancement of housing accessibility through condominiums, a case of middle-income urban residents. Please help me welcome Mr. Anthony Okudi, who I'm made to understand was one of our very own students, who is doing the work of representing us out in the field. And we really, really appreciate the collaborations. These are some of our stakeholders. They are no longer students, so they are major stakeholders when they go out there. And we always thank them to come, when they come and share with us the knowledge they have got out there and how they help us to collaborate with people out in the field. We thank them and keep encouraging others to keep coming. I would like to recognize the presence of some of our lecturers who have joined us. First of all, we have a guest amidst us. He's called Dr. Emmanuel Senabulia, who is an architect. And I think he's passionate about research. We are happy to see you, sir. he has a presentation tomorrow, but he has honored us with his presence because he's excited about the young people's work. So, Mr. Kudi, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anthony Francis Okudi. I was here doing land economics. I graduated last year, September. After campus, I was a property manager, but now I've taken a little branch. I'm now doing taxation with EY. As he's trying to connect, I can keep narrating to you my thesis. So as I was here, I did research on condominium development in Uganda. My research topic is assessing the development of condominiums in Uganda in enhancing the access to housing among the middle-income urban residents. So just to get you up to speed, we all know that land supply is fixed. So, and on that same note, the population keeps on increasing over the years. So it's quite convenient to dig into the idea of constructing houses vertically rather than horizontally. So taking this, for example, if we had the same piece of land and decided to construct building complexes like this, we would accommodate very many people as compared to the other instance where we just develop horizontally. The bungalows would be accommodating fewer people as compared to these vertical uprise buildings. So I run to my problem statement. The burden of getting service land and the increased prices of building materials over time makes constructing a house a big challenge in Uganda. So with the introduction of the Condominium Act, this provides a foundation for people to dig into the idea of owning housing, and they don't have to dwell so much on collecting their savings, and they want to construct houses. So with the condominiums, you get to own a house, you're given the title, and you get the shelter that you need. We all believe that shelter is a basic need, second to food. So housing is very important. So with all the challenges that we face with the housing deficit, I've taken away without reading the land policy, but by then it was 2016, 2.4 million housing units as a housing deficit. So fighting that deficit is quite a challenge. And looking at Uganda, we have very many, the housing industry is largely populated by the private investors. So the government just comes in to chip in a little, but hopefully in the future, I try to recommend that maybe there could be joint partnerships between the public and the private sector so that we can provide more affordable housing avenues to the population at large. So my objectives looking at housing are centered at three things. One, when you're looking for a house, you have to consider the money. Can you afford it? Then secondly, what attributes are you looking at? Then that's on the demand side. Then on the supply side, I was looking at the land values. How does the land appreciation affect the construction of condominiums? We all know land keeps on appreciating. So with that aspect of appreciation and other economic factors, maybe inflation and the others on that same note, they affect the way these real estate developers are delivering housing to the population. So looking at my conceptual framework, as looking at a few parameters. First of all, the availability of land. We all know that land supply is fixed, so there could be instances whereby developers decide to buy land, demolish the old structures there, and put up uprise buildings. So that was a parameter to look out. Then the nature of the land values. We all know that land keeps on appreciating over time. Then the building procurement systems. So these ones I want to stress too. The integrated, that's majorly used by the national housing, government aided. For them, they have the resources. They can contract. They can use their in-house architects, engineers, and they do the whole construction project. But for the other companies in the private sector, they do the separated building procurement system, whereby, let's say, BuildNet gets maybe contracts private architects, they do the plans, then they contract civil engineers to do the structure designs and everything. So those are two procurement systems that I was looking at both ends, the private and the public sectors. Then the legal framework, of course, I'm looking at condominiums, so I have to, in my literature, I looked at the Condominium Act. That is on the dependent variable. Then on the other side of the dependent variable, access to housing, we have to look at the participants, that's the real estate developers. Then the attributes, of course, with the population, as you're looking for housing, we have to look at those attributes that stand out for us to choose a specific house. Is it the aesthetics quality? Is it proximity to social services? Is it the security? Is it privacy? So there's a lot to that. Then, of course, you can't forget affordability. Now, just to note on the cost burden method that I used, so there's a literature that I was reading, UN Habitat, the cost burden method. They state that if housing is, if you spend more than 30% on housing, then that doesn't stand to be affordable, because it's not only housing. You have to look at the other utilities and all that not. So at the end of the day, if you're spending more than 30% and your take home is like 10% savings, that's not a good, that's not good financially. So yeah, so as I did my research, I based on the cost burden method, 30%. If it passes the test, then condominiums are affordable. Then my research design, unfortunately, we are the year that was hit by COVID, so our research scope was kind of compromised. So for my respondents, I just was able to get to a few 100, of which 50 were in condominiums, then 50 were in the standalone houses. So looking at the fact of affordability, you can't rely on the people that are living in condominiums because they're already there. They afford the condominium. So you have to look at the other people in standalone houses. What is their ideology behind condominiums? Could they be thinking into getting condominiums? Then, of course, the other methods, cluster sampling, divide. My case study was Nalia, so I had to pick different clusters of Nalia and sample, where I find condominiums are constructed by Comfort Homes, BuildNet, Arkwright, then National Housing, just to get a fair picture of the place. Then purposive sampling, of course, there are those people that you have to reach out to because they're in the industry. Those are the developers, the property managers, the brokers for the land values, and also convenient sampling, because you know, we're during the COVID era. Yeah, so this is my matrix. I've tried to explain my chapter 3, my methodology, so you can just follow. Attributes, so I'm looking at sustainability, privacy, security, all those attributes, and this is got from the residents in the condominiums, as well as the property managers. They have something to say about the housing. Then affordability, as you can see, look at the payment arrangements. Various companies have different payment arrangements. So there are those that say after the completion of the building complex, they give their residents 1 year to finish the payment. So if, let's say, a 3-bedroom condominium in area is 230 million and you're given a year, how do you go about it? So that's a big gap to investigate. Then, of course, the land values and availability. Looked at the real estate developers and the brokers to get the information as regards to that objective. So fast forward into my findings. Here, the concept of affordability. By the way, when I went to the field, I didn't know that condominiums, they had that option of renting. It's they could be the same as apartments, but for a condominium, you get a title. And it's of recent, there's an interesting development that there's an option to rent a condominium. So not the usual perception that you always have that condominium, you have to, you know, get the 230 million and buy. So that's a good thing. If there's an option of renting, it's good, but unfortunately, fairly, most of the condominiums, you have to pay 1.5 million a month, 1.5 to 2 million as rent. So this is impacting the affordability. Is this below the 30%? So when I went to the field, I discovered that most of the people spend more than 30% to afford the condominiums, given the payment plan. Most condominium developments, you're given a year to finish up with the payment, then you're given the title and everything. So the payment plan is not fair. So in my recommendations, I actually highlighted this and shared that if the developers could offer a longer payment period, maybe people would dig into the idea of using condominiums. Then for the people in the standalone houses, among the questions I asked was still on the grounds of affordability, whether they could, what was the best strategy to afford the condominiums. You have the option of mortgage loans. You can also take out a personal loan if you don't go to financial institution as compared to the mortgage loan, then also using personal income. Well, looking at the fact that condominiums are expensive and first of all, ignoring the other fact that my research was centered on middle income people, so the ideology, the concept of being arrogant, not knowing about mortgage loans was not identified. So everyone knew about the mortgage loans, but the conditions attached to it, looking at the payment plan, it was quite inconveniencing. So very many people don't dig into the idea of using mortgage loans, so they prefer to rely on their savings. Just wait it out, maybe save for 10 or 8 years to get your money, then you go make the first deposit and you pay as based on the company policy. So overall, looking at this on the concept of affordability, it wasn't affordable. The affordability level is relatively low. Looking at this pie chart, the 30% is not that big. Most of the people are above this 40%, the gray area. Then the perception of housing attributes. People look at very many things. So the middle class, they have a lifestyle. They are not the same as the low class, or maybe they are trying to relate to the upper class. So with the middle income class, there is that lifestyle they want to live. You know, condominiums have, they come with a gym, then swimming pool, you know, those other attributes. So people look out for that. So as I was in the field, I did the research and tried to ask people on what inspires them to dig into the idea of condominiums. So one, I looked at proximity to social services. We all know transport is a big factor. So if I live in Nalia and I have to go and work in Masindi, it doesn't make sense. So yeah, so very many people look at the proximity, look at security, privacy, then sustainability and aesthetics quality. So overall, the biggest count was security. I believe everyone has to look out for their security. So yeah, the facts here show that security took the biggest cut, then followed by proximity. I think we are all in agreement with Lowenstein's theory for those that do land economics. Yeah, transport is a very big factor. So looking at this, I did the chi-square test, and turns out it's significant. The housing attributes play a big role when people are looking out for housing. The third objective, that's the delivery of condominiums. Looking at this, I tried to compare the pricing of condominium units and the pricing of land. So doing the elasticity, most of you, I'm sure you did economics. So yeah, the change in the price of the condominiums over the change in the price of land, just to draw a small elasticity curve. As you can see there, so ABC, that's the period. I took a span of 8 years just to looking at the constructions, the building complexes that are constructed in Nalia. Of course, the construction date is always there, so you can do a simple tally and try to plot it out. So as you can see, as I tried to plot there, between A and B, you see the supply is inelastic. This was because during that time, however much land values keep on appreciating, there are times when they appreciate drastically. So the developers tend to hold back and they don't want to buy land. So they want to capitalize on the ongoing projects that they already have, the condominiums. So they tend to increase the price and transfer that price to us, the people. You get? Yeah. So during that time, you see how the land values are impacting on the supply. The supply in the overall, during that whole period, becomes inelastic. So in the other instance, when the supply of land becomes relatively fair, let's say, you know, when you're constructing condominiums, you have these developers are looking out for freehold and Milo tenure. So they don't want to look into leasehold. Leasehold is in the developed countries, America, Canada, but for Uganda, most of them, they look out for Milo. So when land is available and the prices are fairly within their range, of course, looking at their profit margin, the supply tends to loosen up and becomes elastic. That elasticity came up after that. I don't know. There is that time when we had that big, okay, I couldn't call it so big, but that pinch of inflation. Yeah, so everyone tried to act to their best interest. So looking at the housing industry, this is what happened. Based on looking at condominiums, I'm not looking at any other type of housing. So as you can see, this comparison of the supply of land availability and the values, there is a great significance when the developers are thinking to deliver the condominiums to the general public. Yeah, trying to be brief. So recommendations, I think you're all familiar with my research. You looked at affordability, housing attributes, and the supply of the condominiums based on the land values and land availability. So recommendations, I'm looking forward to a time maybe when the payment plan is longer, maybe let's say 5 years. That's fair enough. But something better than 1 year is, something more than 1 year is a better arrangement compared to the strict 1 year that we have at the moment. Then joint initiative between the government and the public sector to create partnerships. Unfortunately, you couldn't have that partnership. I think it's around there, Nakawa. There's a partnership that was supposed to, a PPP, that was supposed to, they were supposed to create an estate, but because of land conflicts and everything, we were not able to get that, we're not graced with that. Then the high interest rates attached to the mortgage loans, they tend to scare people to dig into mortgages. So yeah, they believe they can save and construct their houses whenever they feel comfortable. Then financial institutions introducing condominium inventory loans. These would be good on the side of the developers. You know, as a developer, you have your QS, you prepare your plans very well, you talk to the financial institutions, they give you the money, you construct condominiums, you sell, then you take your cut based on the agreement. You can take the 50, then the bank takes 50. I don't know, it's based on your arrangement. This is not common in Uganda, but other countries are doing it. So if we could dig into that idea, that would be nice. Then also our land system is informal. Very many, we have a lot of middlemen. Those brokers, they try to hike the prices, which is not good. So if we had a streamlined registry and you know, we transform our land information system and it becomes very formal, then maybe that could be a plus to the housing industry. So try to be brief. Yeah, 20 minutes. So thank you very much for listening. Hopefully you all learned something.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Anthony Okudi. Quite an insightful presentation there. You see how built environment is broad. We have had a number of different topics. Now we are in economics. I hope some of you are going to go straight to buy those condominiums and don't wait for 20 years after you have left. So I am going to allow only one comment, and this time I'm restricting the comment to... No, it's not from the experience. No. I just, because he's not, he's just sharing with us what he did before. Maybe a comment on two on his work. Mr. Mobiru, any comment? If he doesn't have, it's okay. The time is not our best ally. Thank you very much, Mr. Okudi. You have something, sir.
I'd started talking, you know, I'm also a teacher, so I can be loud. So I don't know whether the presenter, Mr. Okudi, is aware that yesterday and today there's been a workshop on the Condominium Act. This morning I presented the paper there. That's where I was coming from. That's why I didn't come in the morning. And the interesting thing that from the issue of land economics, you need to first of all ask yourself, why are we failing with embracing condominium? First of all, you need to understand our culture here. We are too much of, in terms of our social networks and fabrics, the individuality has gone to a level where I can't fathom an experience of sharing spaces. And with condominium, it goes with ethics and morals and discipline. You need to first of all know that even if I have, I know you guys have these things, subwoofer. Even if I have subwoofer, I can't put noise past maybe 40 decibels. Decibels is how they measure sound. Because I become a nuisance to the neighbor above me and the neighbor below me. You need to know that I can't just cook my mukene just like that. Because the smell might affect a neighbor. You know, simple things like this that we laugh about define how we live with each other. And we are just getting to understand that we don't have expanded land. And the population is going beyond means. So, first of all, when you look at why the condominium developers have made it if, for example, I'm a government official and I've managed to swindle some money, do you think I can take it to the bank? So I need a way of cleaning it up. Either I set up a petrol station and the profits is what I take to the bank, or I buy a property. So we have these condominiums that have hidden ghost owners, and they're the ones renting it out. And yet, in the essence of condominium, even if you look at the Condominium Act, is to allow people own property that they couldn't otherwise afford to buy because of the high premium price of land. So people who are renting condominiums are not renting them because they can afford the condominium. They are renting them because of maybe locality, because of the way the apartment is looking. But in line with this topic of enhancing housing accessibility, it was a nice catch that they are bringing housing closer to people who can't afford standalone houses. In that sense, you need to look at, is there a possibility of housing pool? You know what a pool is? You own a house collectively. Is there a possibility for that? And if there is, are there avenues where you can access that? Maybe a circle. And that way, banks that are giving high interest rates because of high risks of failure to service the loan, because you see, the interest rates are coupled with the high rates of people failing to pay. I think you know this in land economics. But there are some institutions or entities that give you more security that these are not thugs. If it's a circle, I would trust it more than trusting Anthony. Sorry to use your name. So I would think that if you're furthering this research, you look at some of these avenues. Circles owning in this. Yes, the land system is corrupt and messed up, but you need to ask yourself, why isn't the public buying into this condominium? Thank you.
Could be you're not yet left out of the hook. Okay. Next year, please enroll when the things are still fresh on your mind and look at these solutions.
Thank you very much for that. I like the idea that you submitted a paper on condominiums. Good to know that there is someone also looking into the idea of condominiums. Actually, for us to dig further into this research, you sit on the board. I'm going to leave you my email. We shall talk. I think if I'm to do further research, I will look into the idea. So yeah, I'll sleep on it. I'll sleep on the idea, the housing pools. Then yeah, as you stated it, condominiums may not be that affordable looking at our country, but having you people on the board, I believe is going to be a great impact on how we can integrate this into our country. Right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mobiru, you have no excuse than to start a master's right away. Your first candidate is right in front of you. So, Sebo. No, in real estate. He has a topic that is burning he wants to research on. So please, don't sleep. Give us that privilege of having Okudi as your first student. Now, we shall run straight to Christine Navisere as short as possible before we listen to a key discussant of this session, and then we go for lunch. Christine, can you do 10 minutes? Possible? We cut a deal. 10 minutes, leave 10 for the panelists. So Christine is going to present her final research topic of impact of landfill leach on stream water quality, a case study of Chittasi.
Good afternoon to you all. My name is Navisera Christine, and I'm going to discuss the impact of landfill leachate on stream water quality, case study of Chittasi landfill. This is my outline, my background. We all know Chittasi is the site where we dispose our wastes, and these wastes decompose. So as these wastes decompose, they form a liquid we call leachate. That liquid that percolates through the soil from the wastes. This leachate forms as a result of decomposition through several processes. These processes can be biological, physical, and chemical. So remember, the Chittasi landfill is surrounded by the Chittasi water stream, and as these leachate form, they are combined with rainfall water, and it is seen flowing into this stream water. So this occurs as a result of this landfill, that's where some parts of the landfill rather, are covered by the liner. So some parts of the landfill don't have a liner. And this leachate is seen percolating into this water stream. Several researchers have embarked on this study, like Zambare, and they're using chemical parameters to assess this impact. And according to Richie, he advised the use of the spatial and temporal, he advised the use of remote sensing in order to add in the spatial and temporal aspect of this water quality. And for the spatial and temporal aspect, it will provide us with those places that are mostly polluted than the rest. And we are able to access this information over time unlike the chemical parameters. So the physical parameters to discuss the water turbidity, temperature, and sediment deposits. Like I told you, the problem is water contamination by this leachate from the landfill, especially these parts where the leachate escapes from the landfill to the water stream. Some of the chemical parameters the researchers used include the zinc, magnesium, there is sulfate, chloride, iron, and I'm embarking on the physical parameters. My main objective is to assess the impact of landfill leachate on the physical characteristics of water quality. The specific objectives, number one is to determine the spatial distribution of leachate in the landfill, and this is over time. Number two is to determine the extent to which the landfill has encroached on the recommended distance from the water stream. Remember I said this landfill being on the hilly area, these leachates seep into these areas nearby the water stream and they escape into the water stream. My methodology included data collection, and these the kind of data I collected included the Landsat images. We can see the red bit is the objective one. These Landsat images were processed, and this processing included the atmospheric correction and the radio correction, so that I can analyze these leachate indicators, the spatial distribution of leachate in the landfill. These leachate indicators include the gaps in vegetation cover, the soil wetness, and the spectral anomalies. These spectral anomalies were used as ground truthing for this leachate. So I picked points from the landfill where these spectral anomalies existed. Spectral anomalies, I mean these lipid coatings on this leachate. This leachate can be seen physically. So with those indicators, I was able to determine the spatial distribution of this leachate within the landfill. For objective 2, included the extent to which the landfill has encroached on the recommended distance. So, and here I was able to come up with the distance to which it was encroached on. And for objective 3, included the examining of these physical water parameters and then obtaining the spatial variation. And with this spatial variation, I was able to assess the impact of this leachate has caused on this water. My results for objective 1, like I discussed before, the spatial distribution, the leachate indicators included the soil wetness. The soil wetness is the green part, covering 41.3%. The yellow part indicates the gaps in vegetation cover, covering 28% of the landfill. Vegetation cover covers around 30.7. Remember, it is supposed to be vegetation cover alone, minus the gaps in vegetation cover and the soil wetness. So the gaps in vegetation cover and the soil wetness tell us the leachate presence within the landfill. And the other one is the graph for these indicators. That was for 2021, and this is for 2000. For 2000, the soil wetness was 35.7, indicating an increment. That is the green part. The gaps in vegetation cover, yellow, and then the vegetation cover covering 34.3%. The other one is the chart for these indicators, and so the results show that the leachate in 2000 and 2021, the leachate increased over time by a percentage of around 4%. And that was the spatial distribution of this leachate within the landfill. These images look a little different because for this one I used the Landsat images, and for 2021 I used Sentinel. That was because of the resolution. For objective 2, the extent to which the landfill has encroached on the recommended distance. Here I had to do the buffer analysis, and from my data collected, that was from the Ministry of Water and Environment, the recommended distance provided to me was 100. That was 100 meters. That was what they left from between the water stream and the landfill. So from the buffer analysis, the distance that I obtained was 91.49 meters. That was the distance encroached on by these wastes and its leachate. And with this distance, we can judge how the water looks like with this kind of encroachment. Out of the 100 encroaching by 91, that is too big. For turbidity, this is objective 3. Water turbidity, remember it is the measure of how clear the water is. There's clear water and cloudy water. So for water turbidity, is measured in nephelometric units. I did this over time. That is 2000 to 10 and 2021. For 2000, the values ranged between 2 to 6, and the green part indicates low turbidity. The lower the turbidity, the more clearer the water is. So high turbidity indicates poor water quality. So, and the recommended turbidity for water is between 1 nephelometric units to 5. And beyond that, the water is said to be polluted. And the green part, we can see for 2000, where the stream begins from, is around between 2 and 3 point something. Then the light blue part is around between 3 to 4. Then the dark blue is around 4 to 6, indicating before this stream approaches this landfill. For 2000, the water is not turbid. Like the turbidity is within the potable limits. So, and we don't have, maybe for the other part that is nearer the landfill, for 2010, the turbidity ranged between 6 to 9. And before the stream, the water was not as turbid as it was away, because we can see the green part and we can see the light blue. Though this one is a little more polluted compared to 2000. For 2021, where the water stream is indicated by green at the beginning part, that is green, it is between 5 to 7, indicating a little, it is deviating away from the recommended, because the recommended is between 1 to 5. And as the stream continues, we can see where it is completing from is around 9 to 12, already beyond the potable limits. So from that, we can tell how the water quality is, meaning the water is polluted as the time goes on. And these were the graphs for lows and high. For water temperature, this is measured in degrees Celsius. And temperature here, I had to calculate the radiance first, then reflectance, then brightness temperature, emissivity, then the final temperature. For 2000, the temperature, again the green part is low, the blue part is high. For 2000, it is beginning from the blue part, then the green, and though the values are not deviating away, are not deviating much away from the recommended temperature, because the recommended temperature for water is 20 degrees Celsius, specifically drinking water, because this water stream is purposely used for human consumption. The water stream is beginning from the light blue part, which is between the 22 to 24, already beyond the potable limits, and ends in again 22, already beyond. So we can tell that the water is already polluted by this leachate. For 2021, it is from the low again to low. However, we can this was also another parameter. For 2000, the sediment deposits. Remember, the sediment deposit ranges between 0 to 15 milligrams per liter. And for 2000, it ranged between 16 to 17 milligrams per liter. And the blue part indicates 17. The pink part represents values between 16 to 17, a little deviating from the permissible sediment deposit concentration. For 2010, the concentration increased for sediment deposits. I think this was because of these wastes that continue percolating into this water stream, and even the erosion of these deposits, the wastes rather. Then for 2021, we can see the concentration. This is the spatial variation between the different parts, and still the spatial variation. And this was the spatial variation for 2021. We can see for it tends to the landfill, the value increased. It is around 27, yeah, and as it tended after the water streams, around 17 milligrams. And this is the before, during, and after the landfill. And my conclusion from this analysis, I found out that the leachate has a negative impact on this water stream, especially those parts that are nearer to the landfill. So with this, and this is due to the seepage of this leachate into the water stream. So with this, I can recommend the reuse and recycling, compositing, filtration of this rather the wastes, and then even filtration of this water before usage. And from the journals that I read, the community members also recommended the closure, since this has been in consideration since 2010. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Christine, for that elaborate presentation. The panelists, please, Madame Sophie, as usual.
Thank you, Christine, for that presentation. However, I have nothing to do, but I have to make comments. That's my role. Number one, you also have Duncan's issue of personalizing. I did this, we did this, you know. You need to improve that if you're to go into research. I think Mr. Moses will have to give us a session on that personalization of research. Thank you. The other thing that I realized was in the data. Your results seem fine. The discussion seems okay. But now I'm wondering, you told us there is yellow, which shows a gap. There's something you showed, that a gap between the vegetation and something. So I'm wondering, how did you differentiate that this is dried vegetation, this is leachate? Because that is very important, especially in the image you're using. Because if you use an image and then you just generalize that this yellow part is a gap between vegetation and the wetness, the soil wetness. So I felt maybe that could have been an issue in your analysis. Maybe if you handled it, probably you need to give us more justification. Another thing I saw in your work was the nomenclature. Somewhere you had turbidity, another part you had water turbidity. That is also not good. We need to be a little bit consistent when we are doing research. Then finally is your maps. I don't like the visibility, the visual that your maps are bringing out. Let's go to maybe temperature or the spatial deposition. Even you, it is so hard for you to read some of these things. So that means that we, the viewers or the end users, also get a bit irritated. Basically, that is my comments. Thank you. Otherwise, I think it's fine.
Maybe to tackle about the comment of soil wetness, how I discovered it from the images. I used NDVI, that is normalized difference vegetation. The negative, it ranges between -1 to 1. So from this I was able to see the wet areas, the bare land and vegetation. So the wet areas indicated soil wetness, and the bare land indicated the gaps in vegetation cover, and the values higher indicated the vegetation cover. So with that I was able to analyze those parameters, and an addition of the spectral anomalies, because I had to pick these points physically from the landfill. So this helped me to indicate these the places where leachate exists clearing.
Thank you. Christine, I think I have an issue with your conclusions. You have very good discussions. I know if you give it some time, you'll give us good conclusions and good recommendations. Okay, they will not leave Chittasi landfill. So how do we live with the what we have? Okay, so take time, look for your discussions, and have very good conclusions. Otherwise, the only issue I had here was your conclusions, which I believe you will work on. Congratulations. Okay, I know it's been a long time seated here. I would request the key discussant to just give us maybe 10 minutes, just briefly. Mr. Mubiru, please. I wish it is Mr. Mubiru, the engineer. Or the key discussant. Duncan. Who is Duncan? Where is his laptop? Is this the one we used in the morning? he had put it on the other one. Someone come and help.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Engineer Mobiru. Mr. Mobiru is seated right here. My young brother. He's 2 years younger than me. So, in the interest of time, I know it's a sensitive part that we are going to look at, but we'll be a little brief. And, we are looking at how to improve research to meet international standards. Whatever we are going to do, or whatever we do as far as research is concerned, must not only meet our national standards. Of course, we start with Kyambogo standards, then the national standards, Uganda, and then the international standards. And as a science-based school, would want to understand what is good scientific practice or research practice. We conduct our science based on honesty, integrity, okay? That is very, very important. If you have any results that you get, that's what you have to do what? To tell us. You don't just say cook results. So, in the rules in our scientific work, we should observe professional standards. We accept the practices of the different disciplines, like the land economists, the building economists or quantity surveyors, the architects, the engineers, and the others. You document the results and present the results clearly and honestly without cooking. Okay? You don't fabricate, you don't falsify information, okay? Or you don't manipulate the data you get. Whatever you get is what you're supposed to present honestly in research. Consistently questioning one's own findings and practicing strict honesty with regards to contributions of different key players is also very, very important. And according to, you have the other chart there, according to some source which is put down there, it is important to make sure that when you're dealing with integrity, you follow, you utilize, you conduct, you communicate, and you supervise our science findings. Now, of course, to do research, we have a very big bottleneck that we normally fall, or a trap that we fall in, which is called plagiarism. Okay? And what is plagiarism? When we talk about plagiarism, sometimes people don't take it serious. It is a practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as your own. According to Oxford Dictionary, that is the the definition. And it's punished severely in academic institutions. In other places, it may not be punished, but it's punished severely. And in some cases, you'll be disqualified, okay? If you're doing research, they can disqualify you. Or if they get, after getting your paper, I don't know that you've heard of some some scenarios, even after getting your degree, it can be recalled because you plagiarized. So it is a very serious offense. There are different types of plagiarism. We have the global up there, passing off an entire text. Of course, some people will come and you get someone's report and you change the name and the location. If it was in Mukono, or you take it to Budaka. We've seen it happen. You change the name, the title remains, and you change the case study area, but the rest remains the same, even the conclusions. I've been in this institution for quite a while, 10 years, and I've seen some of these things happen. We've seen some reports, but after people had graduated and they've left the institution. So, that global plagiarism is punishable. We have verbatim plagiarism, when you directly copy someone else's work. You can paraphrase. Once you don't quote where you're getting the information from, you're plagiarizing. And we can check it out. Sometimes we ask you for your soft copies when you're doing research, because we want to check out and see, have you plagiarized or not? We want to see the percentage. There is an acceptable percentage when you're supposed to plagiarize, okay? And we use some links. One of the links is there, where you can check the plagiarism. But what most of you do, you patch. There is that so-called plagiarism, patchwork plagiarism, where you get work from this one, you get from there, you get from there, and you put it together and you call it your report. Yeah? That is called plagiarism. Once you don't quote the source where you're getting information from. So it is important we avoid plagiarism. Okay? So, what can be labeled as plagiarized if it has been composed wholly or in part by someone other than the one who submits it? So it can be a collaborative effort where you collaborate and you're trying to make up something, and then you don't. So and so has brought the work, and then the other one, and then the other one, and you put it together, but you've not really quoted the sources where you're getting that information. You're not giving record, you're not giving credit to the source where you're picking it from. And it's also happened. It's really, really very bad. One time I had an experience when I was doing my master's. Of course, we are doing a group assignment, and it had marks. We spent 3 months working, sleepless nights. But when we reached the time of submitting and presenting, the professor said, you picked this work from, you picked just 2 lines from some source, and we didn't give credit to where we picked it from. She gave us a 0. So our 3 months, we are gone. And some sleepless nights. And I'll never forget that. So when they talk about plagiarism, and when we do talk about it, we have we've been victims at some point, okay? It is highly punishable. So, what does it do? Why does it do you harm? If you pick if you get information from some sources, you just indicate where you're picking the sources from. So how do we avoid this plagiarism? Sometimes you put in quotation marks if you're quoting directly from some source. So and so said this. Put in quotation marks. You can cite. It's when you paraphrase. If I said that potatoes are better than cassava, you can get your own words and you write it, and at the end you put my name. Moviru 2022. Okay? If I quoted it in 2022. Or you can have an in-text referencing where you say according to so and so, and then you write, and the year. And then you write. Of course, if there are figures or ideas that originated from other researchers, these ones should also be acknowledged. If you've seen, like the other figure, it's coming from the other source. Okay? It has been acknowledged. So you need to acknowledge the sources where you're getting the information from. In common knowledge, paraphrased statements of facts, like statistics, that are picked from government research reports, need to be given credit also. Okay? When in doubt, you cite it. And of course, at the end, you need the reference list, okay, of all the information that you have highlighted. And when you're making your reference list, you must make sure that you have the consistency. Consistency in research is very key. As you heard Madame Sophie telling the former presenter about the issue of consistency. You can't talk about Baker 2012 and then you also say Baker D 2012. Those are different people and they are different publications. And of course, sometimes you can also find that if I had some papers that I published some time back and I write another paper now and I pick some information from those research papers that I published some years ago and I don't quote the sources, I'm also plagiarizing. Okay? So, wherever you quote, whether from your own work that you did some time back, you must quote the source where you're getting information from. So what we get in a nutshell, we need integrity while doing research. Ethics are very, very important, okay? And we have to make sure that we follow the protocol, the standards, both the national and the international standards when we are doing our research, because it must fall within the policies, whether the research policies of a country or the research policies of the journal where you're going to publish the work, or the research policy at the international level. And that's why we are having such mentorship programs. We want the mentoring between the students and the lecturers and even what the industry is providing. I thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mubiru. He's the last discussant of this session before we go off. Yes, Mr. Mubiru, Engineer Mubiru. Now, Mr. Mubiru.
My young brother.
Let me teach you something. I am called Dr. Andy. Dr. Andy. Yeah. I welcome you all. I need to comment something about engineer's submission. This is a hot topic in our community, and research community is a closed boundary community. And Ugandans are so bad to the extent that we have become consultants of cheating. Last year I came across a publication by a certain scholar from the University of Michigan or Chicago, but in America. And it was about the morality of generally the publication. They came here and they collected data in Banda and Wandegea. Even photos are there of how works are cheated in Ugandan universities. This is the University of Chicago. So we are consultants in that trade. It is a publication of 2020. And those Banda kiosks are there in that paper. It's about 30 pages. Now, our world is closed to the extent that when you write something that you have copied from someone and you attempt to publish, even that person whom you have copied can even know before it gets out. And the bad news is he may be your reviewer. I have a colleague whom we are studying with. He wrote a publication paper, sent to a journal, and they gave that paper for a certain Nigerian goon to review. Now this Nigerian goon did a tactic and wrote to the journal that reject this paper, it's too bad. Kumbe, he was strategizing the journal to reject, and he edits and submits. Because remember, the rule is once you submit for review, it can't be submitted anywhere else. So once it is rejected, you can submit. Now, he was successful in the short run. Then, after he submitted his own version, the journal now sent to this one who was rejected to review. This is Nigeria and Tanzania. It's very closed community. So it is easy to be embarrassed when you steal in academia, because you are writing for people who have been where you are. We have seen cheaters, you have seen that kind of nonsense. We have seen it all. Just that sometimes we try to be diplomatic and don't embarrass you in front of your girls and boys. Otherwise we can be very disastrous. So it's a global problem. Cooking data, to be honest, is tempting. It is like a beautiful woman. You can easily look at her and predetermine that she's actually not HIV positive because of the temptation. But let me assure you, the rules of plagiarism, they can take you as having cheated after writing 5 words which are similar to someone's work in sequence. As long as you check the practice of taking someone else's work, that one, Turnitin says it is similar to someone's work. It is a similarity check. We call it a similarity check. They don't want to tell you that you have cheated, but they just say you are similar to someone. So, the simple thing, the simple way of circumventing this is paraphrasing. You get time read this publication, know where you have got it from, understand it, and turn it in your own style. Because there is nothing new under the sun. But can you customize your research? Let us see that you have taken some time to think and use your small head. That one is what matters at undergraduate level. There are many softwares. Some of them are cheap. One is called Medley. Another one is Turnitin. Another one is Grammarly. But Grammarly is expensive, which you can use to check those things. So your work can't be published. The result of research is publication. Your work can't be published when it is in that state, because it's not yours anyway. It is someone's work. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mubiru. Engineer Mubiru, you can take your seat. Whereas we were able to get away with some of these things when we were doing research in the years before, I don't think we are going to escape this in the current setting. All your work is going to be run through a